back to the Kingsway Podcast.
Woo!
Wow.
You're here.
That was way too much excitement.
No, that was perfect. This is a big week. It's Halloween week, which we had our battle talk about that.
Halloween.
Yeah.
Halloween. Well, it's Halloween's week.
It's
Hallows week.
All Hallows Week.
There you go.
Yeah.
All Hallows Week.
Anyway, if you're confused about what we're saying right now, you're not alone. And go check out the last episode.
The last podcast we thought about what Halloween means. We found out no one really knows, and everyone thinks they know.
That's an oversimplification, but not totally wrong.
Not totally wrong. All Saints Day is November 1st, all you need to know, and Halloween is the day before.
Yeah.
Hallows Eve. So that's what it's currently described as. But today is a special day because we are hitting one of my favorite topics. When we did our top 10 favorite movies of all time. Spoiler alert, it's on that list.
Yeah, it is a top 10 pizza review. That's what we're doing this week. I'm saying Hawaiian's got to be up there.
Hawaiian?
I'm kidding.
Oh
I'm not
my
going to derail
gosh,
this. So
no,
soon.
don't you do this to me. Pineapple on pizza.
We're not talking about pizza.
Don't put hairy fruit on pizza. That's disgusting.
I do love Hawaiian pizza, though.
No, the actual topic we're talking about is the Harry Potter series.
Now, don't turn this off.
Don't
close out. Hey, we on this show are all good Christian people who do not perform witchcraft.
No, we don't.
We've read and watched all of it, except for I haven't read all of it. And none of us are Wiccan.
Nope.
None of us use Ouija boards.
Nope.
Do you guys?
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
So
bonus points if you can spell Ouija board.
The reason
there's no W.
That just blew my mind. There's no W?
No.
No.
Is it like OUIJA? Ouija.
I think that's
English.
right.
English is awesome.
English board.
It's probably not even an English word. It's
I want to
from somewhere
reclaim
else.
Harry Potter because I feel like, and why this is important to me is because I feel like it is one of the most misunderstood and at times undervalued into, I think, the windows and doors that it opens into conversations that have a really cool insight into some incredible gospel themes.
You know, I'm just realizing.
What?
I'm sorry to reach right behind you.
Please.
One of the books on my shelf. What's a Christian to do with Harry Potter?
Whoa.
Dun, dun, dun. I haven't read it, so I don't know what to do with it.
While we talk.
You just like to have the books, just not read them.
I like to have a collection of books I can suggest to other people who actually read.
I make the library. I don't read the library.
So if you haven't discovered already, or if you're watching on YouTube, we have a special guest in to help us with this discussion. Special to me, should be special to you.
Let me see if I can pronounce this. Traci Coquillard.
Traci Coquillard.
Traci Coquillard.
Right.
Is my sister Traci. She has come all the way down, hails from Springfield, Missouri.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hales sounds really old English.
Oh, it is, man.
She lives in Springfield.
I hailed from there.
She
hailed
came
all the
down
way
to
over
help
here.
with the discussion.
What the hell?
Mainly because Ryan has not finished reading the books.
That's true.
And so I wanted to make sure that our discussion had another person that can remember some details. And so Traci has read the books multiple times?
Yes.
Okay. So
many times.
I think I've listened to them in the last 2 years, I think 5 times through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I kind of have just like literally at one point I was like reading other things, and then this was like dessert of reading. Like it was like because I'm guilty party that I get in the shower and I listen to something almost every time. So if I take a 15-minute shower, it's like I can just slowly work through things. And then sometimes I get out of the shower and I just leave it on until I went to
you
bed.
realize, I'm still listening.
He turns the water off, stands in the shower for hours.
He's had pneumonia 4 times. It's fine.
It is. It's a captivating story. So here's I want to start the discussion. I know, and Ryan alluded to this, I know that there is some negative emotions that sometimes is tied to the series, that there are sometimes, I think, deep emotions that come from heritage and maybe a parental figure or someone that was over top of you when these books came out that didn't allow you to read them or look at them or know anything about them. And I'm not trying to downplay or discourage that maybe that's not a person to listen to or that they were ignorant in any way. All I'm trying to say is that this, and I think this discussion is going to reveal, there's a little bit more to it than at that surface level that was taught that maybe has some value worth sifting through.
Well,
Yeah.
our dear grandma gave me a book when I was like 12. That was The Evils of Harry Potter. So, been a rebel from
Our
the
whole
start.
family. Yeah.
I mean, Mom and Dad didn't care, but
Yep.
she got that for me, and Mom was like,
Yeah.
"Thank you," and like kind of like didn't even give it to me. Just like, thanks.
See, and I
didn't read
remember
it.
giving you like the really cool
Sorry, Grams.
hand-drawn like coloring book. That,
Oh yeah.
you remember that one?
I don't even know if I ever drew in it because I was like, it's pretty.
It's
Yeah.
it's really cool.
It's like have it in a.
I didn't.
in a box
be
somewhere,
completely
probably.
honest. I think Katrina helped me get it, so I can't really claim.
Yeah, you
that
got
I
it.
did it.
You acquired it
Got it for
from
me.
somebody else.
So all that to be said, we're going to do our best to be sensitive, and we recognize that everybody holds the right to have some opinions. I just think hold opinions that are different than their own. I think it's just one of those things. I think it's worth our time and discussion. And around Halloween, I think it's just a neat way to kind of have something. And maybe for the first time, you might be intrigued to listen. I know for me, some of the closing things that I'll say is just I feel like this might be a possible way that my kids and I can connect and have gospel-like conversations through something that maybe they'll relate to and get inspired by, and I'm excited to leverage it in that way. So
Before we get started into some of the details of all the books, I want to start with why we're even talking about this at all, why we feel it's even okay.
Just because we're nerds?
One, because we're nerds and we like it. But two, like why is it okay for a Christian to interact with this thing that for some of us growing up, our parents didn't love?
yeah,
Number one, we can interact with allegory and get something deep out of it. So what I mean by allegory is there's a story and it's fictional or at least kind of fantastical, kind of like mythic and whatever. And there are principles within that apply to our real life relationships, our real life problems, our real life
and there are other
faith.
book series that are like that.
Yeah. So like, I think we may have mentioned this before we turn the camera on. C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia.
Absolutely.
So fictional. And at the same time, and
allegorical.
they're not like advocating for hanging out with lions.
No.
But like there are things in the story that even though they're mythical, they apply to our relationship with God, our relationship with other people, with evil and good powers in the world, that kind of stuff. Same thing with J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings,
Absolutely.
Hobbit, Silmarillion, etc. That whole story is one big allegory from a Christian worldview that kind of helps you navigate the world today. Even in the Bible, I think books like Hosea, whether or not it's true or false, is God interacting with an allegory.
And Jonah.
He's allegorizing a person and a group of people to show his relationship with his chosen people. In Hosea, he's kind of like Hosea and Israel's kind of like Gomer.
Yep.
It's not really like God's not advocating that you do that.
Yeah.
He's just displaying something in a different way to kind of help draw out of it. So Harry Potter being an allegory is totally fine.
Absolutely.
I think story is very important.
Yeah.
Even like Jesus uses
Yeah.
parables. I mean, story in general, narrative is very.
Yeah.
It goes
It's
across
very
lines.
widely
it,
used.
It matches generations. It matches different, it can take rich people and young people and poor people and old people and just pull them all into a story. And anything that does that is powerful. And I think story has that main line.
It gets through in a different way because
Yeah.
when you identify with something that you're not trying to have a defense against,
Yeah.
that then takes you somewhere that you wouldn't otherwise be able to go just as you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
Yeah.
So
all of a sudden we're
And
over there.
I love that.
Before we leave that, secondly, with all these stories and allegories and whatever, it's easier to draw like Christian worldview allegories out of stories written from somebody with a Christian worldview. So like I said, Tolkien, C.S. Lewis had a Christian worldview. It's hard to do that with Star Wars. You can shove stuff into it,
Yeah.
but if you really look at it, it's more like Buddhist and more like
Yeah.
there's a weird mystical force in all of us and whatever. And you can do that to it, but you're more shoving stuff into it. With Harry Potter,
Yep.
I almost said J.R.R. Tolkien. J.K. Rowling,
Yep.
at least at the time of writing, I can't say anything about her now. I don't really know. But at least at the time of writing, she was a strong Anglican, the Church of England. She had a deep scriptural Christian worldview, along with her own personal experiences and other things that she used to create this book,
Absolutely.
this series.
And I reading the Times article came out when I think the 10-year anniversary of the last book coming out, and they did this huge thing and how it broke all these records. It's the second highest.
It's been out for 10 years, the last book.
Yeah.
That's really.
The second highest grossing book of all time.
That's really upsetting.
Behind the Bible.
Yeah.
Is the Harry Potter series. And so, for her, she was talking about in that article about how her life had changed so much since she wrote the first book to finishing the last book. And some of the last scenes that she writes in Harry Potter, she was in the middle of a nasty divorce. Her life was falling apart, and she felt like she was losing this character that she had built. And she had such an affection for the ideas and the worldview of what he was doing at the end of the book that she thinks that's why the ending was so powerful, is because she needed what Harry was offering.
Yeah.
In the book. And it's just such a power, and I'm not trying to act like I'm like the complete know-it-all of nerdy stuff of Harry Potter, but I was mystified when I read the books how different, and this I think starts our discussion, from the movies. The movies are good, but they are a shadow of what the book is. They are just a mere like imprint of the wholeness that is the books. And the books are brilliant because of how much they change. So the first book on Audible, because I listened to them, which they're read theater like type with voices, and they're brilliantly done. I'm hoping the Lord of the Rings is supposed to be remade
with
soon.
Andy Serkis.
Yeah, they are.
So good.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm so excited. But the first book's like 6 hours.
Right.
It's so short, and it's written for like 10 and 11-year-olds.
Well, he is 11.
He is. It is. And you read it though as an adult, and you're like, I mean, it still stands up. It's good.
I don't read the first one a lot though. I start with the third
it's
one.
It's powerful, but it's not. It's obviously written with a certain. But man,
that's part of the good part about it. You're supposed to grow up with this. So especially for people who were that age at that time.
Absolutely.
It's possible I started reading them. I'm pretty sure I would have been like 12 or 13. And I think the third one was out at that point. And I remember girls from my soccer team telling me to read them. Yeah. And I remember when the fourth one came out and I got it.
Excited.
And I can remember sitting, our house on Senate. I sat in that like one couch in the other room by the kitchen. I sat on that couch for like, I don't even know. And I think I just read it like straight, which is, 13, 14-year-olds can do that. I can't do that now because my back will hurt forever. But like, I just sat and read through the whole thing, and it was very.
I mean, and it was a
special.
Phenomenon
at
that time. It really was.
was.
And it was divisive. And that's part of the reason why we did the intro, is because at the time there seemed to be two camps. And so on my journey, when I started to read these books, I was older. I was in my mid-20s, and I started to go like, how did I not get this? And it was such a weird thing, because I think as a 13-year-old, when you read them, you're like pulled in by the story.
Well, it's magical and it's special and it's this other world.
For sure, and I'm not trying to negate
And I read
that.
a lot of other things, and it was like, I also like Harry Potter.
I just couldn't believe how the depth of the story was so strong. Like the ins and outs wasn't just bad and evil. It was these deep threads of love.
You called me a lot, and we talked about it a lot. It was fun to watch you like discover what I had known.
Couldn't believe how good it was. And it was one of those things that I think I just thought it had been pomp and circumstance. I thought it was just a young series, like a Marvel movies that just got really popular. And
and it's popular for a time. I felt that way. I hadn't interacted with Harry Potter that much, or Twilight. And a high school ex-girlfriend, before she was my ex-girlfriend, convinced me to start reading Twilight. And I fell asleep in the first chapter. I was like, this is boring. And on top of it, when it gets exciting, all of the excitement is like teenage angst, thirst trap kind of stuff that I did not care about.
Yes.
I wanted what Harry Potter had to offer, along with Lord of the Rings, which is a mystical, fantastical world, good world building.
I like how much you're saying fantastical.
I mean, it's that
really
in like
the best of ways.
I know. It's an enjoyable
Bob
word.
Golfish. It's Bob Golfish.
I feel like it's a variation of just the fantasy.
It is.
Anyway,
it's
like,
very descriptive.
There's magic and there's creatures and there's whatever, and it makes this world seem vibrant, and it doesn't seem like there are corners unexplored. That thing where you're building a world, she does so well.
Oh.
At the same time, it's super relational, which is different from Lord of the Rings, which is like bogged down in the details. It's like reading a dissertation about a place that doesn't exist.
It's a lot. I like the Lord of the Rings movies more than the books, because the books for me do fall into some of that. Like, okay.
I needed it read differently in the Lord of the Rings, and I'm excited.
Yeah.
But here's the thing with Harry. It's very friendship oriented.
Yeah.
Harry, my good friend Harry.
Extremely Harry Potter is friendship. That's what I
Yeah.
would say. Like it is based on, because the three main characters, even though that eventually two of them do end up together. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Hey, how spoilery should we get?
We're going to be very spoilery.
Okay.
It's been like 10 years since the last one, like you guys.
I feel like this
Sorry.
podcast is for people who haven't seen or watched it. So let's be as vague as we can with
but
some of the big stuff.
I feel like you're going to need to know some details in order to get. I will do my best.
Yeah.
All I will say is that the three main characters are best friends with each other, and one of them is a girl. And that is such a rarity that there's not a love triangle, and they're not fighting over that, and they're not.
And she's like super smart. There's kind of like
she's
kind of great
the smartest
like angle in there that I'm like, I like that. She's nerdy, she's smart, she's super feisty at different times. She's very like tells it how it is, and they like all know. They're like, yeah, she's smart. Like, she's the smartest. Like, we wouldn't make it without her.
Harry and Ron try to leave, and they're like, yeah, we got to take her with us.
There's like a moment in the
we
seventh
won't make
book
it.
where I just listened to where Rod's like, we wouldn't
Dude,
make
we
it
got to
without
bring her.
Hermione.
Yep.
But don't tell her I said that.
Well, that's because they get out of the certain place, and she's like brought everything in that stinking little bag,
like
and
the
she's like
mom
super smart
of the group in the best way.
So because of the friendship thing, I think it obviously is a tale that we all connect to because of deep relationships, but it also brings us back nostalgia-wise to some of the first relationships that we made where we were insecure, we weren't sure who we were yet, we weren't sure if we were worthy of friendship that they experienced. And then the friendship matures into this like not just like a I like you, but it's family.
Yeah.
It's the we are how I mean they say it to Harry over and over again. How long is it going to take before you realize we are going with you?
Yeah.
Like you're not going to be alone.
You can't leave us
It's
behind.
that Frodo and Samwise, relationship that's in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And it's very much so, there's a lot of great books do it. So the main thread though, and this is why I think Traci, you'd speak to it. When you read the books versus the movies, like what is the main difference that I feel like, because I feel like, would you agree the shadow, kind of the imprint of the movies, it just isn't the fullness of the books? Like what is that? What's the main thread that I feel like is missing? Because that's not saying the movies are bad. I like
the movies are a great telling of a very deep, beautiful, vibrant story.
I just think, I mean, it's the classic problem of like movie versus book in general, of like they can't possibly give you the same insight as a book that is like being told from the inside of someone.
Yeah, the
where
internal narrative of Harry is very, very important.
It's going to be lacking in a book versus a movie, like almost always, to where what they're thinking and their reaction to things and their processing, you can't make that external in a natural way in a movie in the same way that it just happens in a book. That's always a problem.
And they didn't take the cop out of doing narration a ton, which they could have.
Right.
And they didn't do that.
I just don't think it ever works super. The other side of it, though, is like, I just feel like movies always kind of have to do this where they have to give you the strongest flavor of someone, and they don't necessarily always let it be a complicated flavor. Whereas like the characters in the book, I mean, even looking at the three main leads, Harry is super flawed. Hermione honestly is super flawed.
Yep.
Ron is obviously a mess.
He's a mess.
Like a mess. So in the books you can kind of handle that, where you're like, they're like problematic in certain ways.
And later in the books, though, they start to get a couple things clicking, and you're like, maybe they're getting their stuff together.
Yes.
Like maybe they're going to be okay.
And the movies just can't capture that like growth in the same way in the like little things. They have to show you the more obvious arc of growing and learning, and the books are just going to do a better job.
One example of that is in the first book, the three friends, like, they're kind of close and then they're kind of not, especially with Hermione, the only girl. And then they like, by the end, they're good. But specifically in the books, there's a line that's like, Hermione did something at some point and they super respected it. And it was like, from that day on, they would be friends.
Yeah.
Like you see these specific markers in the books, where in the movies, it's just like, they seem to like each other right now. They seem annoyed at this moment for no reason.
Yes.
Or for a reason we haven't seen.
And they can't narrate that over them to say that.
This is what's really going on.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I only disagree with that the books are a shadow and an imprint with one character, and that's Professor Snape. I truly believe the film does almost perfect justice to his character. I really feel like his character is portrayed so well in the books, and he is by far, I think, the strongest point of the entire series. Not saying that Harry and the main characters didn't do a good job. I just think he holds the key, and if you haven't, try not to spoil here, but he really is the central of kind of what holds this whole thing together. He's playing double agent. You're not sure the whole time. There's this feeling of negation, and his true emotions at the center of his life. He has this incredible connection to Voldemort, but this incredible story of love at the center of his life that has changed him, and it's changed him from the inside out. And it's just a powerful character in the movies that I resonated with more when I watched the movies than I did with the book. When I watched the scene in The Half-Blood Prince, I literally was like, oh, this guy is haunted. Like, he is haunted by this stuff.
Yeah.
And it came across, and I don't know if it was the visuals or the emotions that were able to be displayed, but that was the only character that I found myself going, that was actually really, really well done. Every other one, I was a little bit like, close.
Yeah.
You know?
There were moments where they were spot on, and there were moments where it was like, not complex enough.
Absolutely.
It was too simplified.
The number one I complain about is Dumbledore.
Oh,
right?
God.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Let's
don't
talk
even.
about this.
Let's just, like, get this out of the way. I'm sorry, Michael Gambon, or whatever your name is. You have failed us in a major. I will not forgive you for what you've done to Dumbledore.
I want them to remake it just for that.
Just
If
put
you-
somebody else over his face. Like, you gotta bring the volume
and
down.
explain why she's saying this, because you
Like,
So
give me the eyeballs back, like
yeah.
the eyeballs that X-ray you. They say that in the book like a jillion times, that he looks at you like he's looking through you, and like he's.
Yeah.
I just get like angry guy from the. Sorry.
So if you haven't read Harry Potter,
it's like a sensitive topic.
Dumbledore is the wise sage character in every story.
Super
kind, patient, and he's slowly guiding the main characters. He's not taking
Gently,
over.
like
He's
gently.
slowly guiding the main characters to do what they need to
Calmly,
do to accomplish
wisely.
their mission. And so they had a great guy.
for
the
Who
first,
was the first guy.
And he died.
yeah.
He died. Richard
The
Harris, I
actor-
think, is his name.
The actor died after 2 movies,
How
and there are 8
selfish of
movies.
him.
If he could have
Sorry.
just held on for another however many years. So he died, and they
so
replace him with a
terrible.
guy who's more dynamic. And I say that in a bad way.
But he made 3 movies, right?
He did. It was only the first two.
First 2.
2.
Gosh.
They pick a new guy after the actor died to start in movie 3. And this guy is notoriously
He's like a known actor. Like, he's in other
he's
things.
a good
like,
actor.
in British
and I think
film.
he does the part of Gandalf in general like he thought he
Dumbledore.
should.
Dumbledore.
Ah, man, I'm thinking
Don't
Lord
worry.
of the Rings. He does part of Dumbledore in general like that kind of character should feel like, but he like makes them so much more explosive rather than gentle
But like,
and
did he
guiding.
read the
and-
books? That's what I really want.
Here's
like,
the
but
thing.
Did he?
In film 6, he actually, I think, does a better job. When he goes in Half-Blood Prince, he
I need to watch that movie more. I don't watch that one
He
enough.
does a better job. But the one that's unforgivable is 4. It's
Yes.
unforgivable.
This
Like,
is I've seen this
unforgivable.
as a meme fly around on the internet so much. Yeah. There's
running
a
in.
competition that Harry, one of the main characters, should not be able to enter, and somehow his name gets drawn. And so Dumbledore
confronts him.
and in the books it's like, Dumbledore asks gently or something like
Yes.
that. And in the movies, Dumbledore's like, did you put everything up like
He's
a
like
fire?
running down the steps
Yeah.
at him and like pushes
And
him
he
against
grabs
the
him,
wall.
Yeah.
I'm like, what
grabs
is
him like, give me your
happening?
money, punk.
Like,
And
ooh.
it was such a
It's
weird
upsetting.
decision.
It is
It's
so
upsetting.
betrayal to the character
Seriously.
of Dumbledore.
Yeah.
And it makes me mad because in my heart of hearts, what causes Harry to not trust Dumbledore is not because of those responses. It's because of his passive, kind patience. It's because
Yeah.
he's going, does he care? Not because he's being angry or he's being aggressive. It's because he's literally going, he
He's
just
slow to
seems
act.
be slow. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like he's not doing anything.
Yeah.
And it just and I know for a fact the actor, I don't know this guy's name, had admitted he had not read the books when he did number 4.
Okay.
And so it became one of those like things where like everybody wanted to literally burn him at the stake,
Yeah.
and take him out because
I'm
they're
gonna
like,
physically fight him.
how
I'm gonna
can you
run and push
not-
him up
how
against
can
the
you
wall.
not have read the books? Like it doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. But he read the script and he loved the script, and I was like, yeah, well, you would have read the book and it would have been better. So that to me is like, I want people to read the books purely for Dumbledore.
Because Dumbledore's an amazing character. Like an amazing character, and he's so special to Harry. And I think another thing that, we touched on, like, friendship is an important theme, but like Harry is an orphan.
Yes.
Like Harry
Yeah.
is an orphan who has grown up in a home where he's unloved and abused, basically.
Yeah.
Neglected in every sort of emotional, relational sense. And then comes to a school where, like, Dumbledore is one of his first, Mrs.
Father
Weasley
figures.
kind of, but like his first parental figures.
Yeah.
And is very, very important for him growing up and his development and his, like, his social emotional health is... it's such a sad thing that they didn't capture that better in the movies.
I don't want to ruin everything, but there's an emotional release with his character in one of the later books that should be just the most devastating, hard thing. And it ends up being just not, because of the way that the character is played. And
Yeah.
it's super frustrating because I read this certain section and it like brings you to tears.
It does.
And you watch it and you're like,
It's fine.
You're like,
Yeah.
we'll be fine.
It's fine.
And I'm just like, what is that?
Yeah.
It's a missed opportunity is all it
It's-
is. And it's sad.
It's no doubt that Harry Potter is definitely a modern classic, just like the others. But I, like I said earlier, I feel like the thing it does, along with world building and a battle between good and evil and some of these other classic things, is the emotional, relational depth. Some of the scenes that talk about Harry's past and how it's coming up now, that talk about other people's pasts, they feel like being in a counseling section where they're like, why'd you get mad at this? And you're like, I don't know. It was my dad. And like, it feels like that. But you were there with Harry when it happened, and then later when he's being broken about it.
Oh, it
And
is.
Yeah.
It's classic.
That's why it's so good, because it's so real in those ways. It's so human, and at the same time, it's fun and a giant world and whatever. And those two things mixed together are, for lack of a better term, magical.
And like you said, what a great way to connect with your kids about some of that.
yeah,
and to
absolutely.
use it as like a teaching point of like, look at what Harry did here. Do you think that was a great choice? Or like, why do you think he did that? Or what do you think he was feeling?
My oldest
those are
does that already. Jace does this all the time. He will watch something in a movie and he'll go, I don't get that. And then he has a very specific question about what motivation would lead someone to do that. And what is he trying to get? Because in his mind, he's like, if it doesn't gain you something, why would you choose to do that? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you're like, yeah. Which leads me to my favorite part.
Oh.
And I've been waiting this whole time
the
to talk
central
about
strain.
There's a
for
the
it all.
glee.
central strain through the whole thing of
There's
Harry
a glee
Potter.
in your eyes. That's
And here's the thing. I have come to the conclusion that why this book gripped me so much is because very early on, there's this mention of a secret. There's a secret magic.
An old
A
magic.
deeper old magic?
Deeper
What is it? Yeah.
magic that has saved Harry. That even
protects
that
him.
even Dumbledore is like, I don't know completely what happened, but I know it's around something like this. And over the course of the books, it just keeps coming up, and you watch it and you watch it and you watch it.
They hit on it, and
When
they
he
hit on it
hits-
again, and
he
then
hits on
they
the
come
Prisoner
back.
of Azkaban when he meets, and then he hits on it with the Weasleys, and he hits on it with Jenny, and then he's, it's just all these all these cases where all of a sudden Harry is being infused with this deep love of this old magic.
Yeah.
And when he is attacked at the end of the Order of the Phoenix, which I know I'm getting this way, but I'm just chill it. There's this great scene where they are literally Voldemort, the evil, has returned, is trying to
He's
separate.
kind of the Satan figure in the story.
He's trying to separate Harry, and he's trying to reveal in Harry all his brokenness, all his wrongness, all the things he's done wrong, and how he does not deserve what he's received, and he is not enough, and he's not strong. And then Harry responds out of the love that he has received. I feel sorry for you that you do not have the friends that I have. I feel sorry for you that this is all that you could want in the world. I feel sorry for you that you will never have what I have in these relationships, because we learn that Voldemort does not know love.
It's like the classic, lie of, what's Satan would try to say to you of like, this is who you truly are as a person, even as a child of God. This is actually who you truly are. You are this broken and evil, and you're just like me. And it's then countering that with, no, actually, I am this, which is like beautifully, perfectly gospel narrative.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's not problematic to me.
That's my number one problem with the movies is love is only mentioned, I think, 2 or 3 times through the entire series, and it's mentioned in such a like skim off the surface.
Well, like Hollywood,
and it's just never talked about
it's
its
love.
deep ability to provide friendship, its deep ability to provide protection,
security, stability,
all this
like
stuff.
foundational,
So, to kind of tie this all around, one of the biggest complaints about Harry Potter from a lot of the Christians when I was growing up is it's all about magic and magic's bad and whatever.
And sorcery and
sorcery, and it'll
and-
make you want to be a wizard and a Wiccan and whatever. First of all, Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia have magic, and they don't make you want to be
wizards.
No.
Yeah.
They may make you want to dress up as Legolas for Halloween.
I was
For a kid like me, I would not fit in the suit. But magic is a comment in those series and in Harry Potter especially on power.
Yep.
It's not necessarily political power, although it can be.
Can be.
And it's not necessarily physical strength, although it can be. But it's like how you influence the world. And so the people who rely on magic, who are trying to scare everybody and control everything and gain and get, like they are using magic the same way that people use influence and money and charisma and whatever in our world today. That's a conversation to be had. But the cool thing about Harry, first of all, it says that love is the oldest, deepest, whatever magic. It's this older, stronger, more unknown. If magic is power, love is an older, stronger power. Then it predates you being selfish and you being in power.
Voldemort is quoted saying, I'd forgotten about this, or I never knew about this. Like, that's his line, is he's like, because there's several times he tries to kill Harry and it won't work. And he's constantly being thwarted by this older thing that he's unaware of because he's never had it.
Yeah. And you see that love between Harry and his parents, between Harry and his new family of friends. Because his blood family, his relatives who kind of adopted him, they do not exemplify this love, even though they're his blood family. And he finds a new family in his friends, and that new family and his friends resembles this old love kind of magic. They're there for each other. They're whatever, and so it kind of pits spells and magic against love. Both as forms of power, but some people don't want the love and they just want the like angry evil power.
Here's the cool thing. I'm gonna try not to. If you have not read the books, turn it off now. All right.
Yeah.
Subscribe, whatever. Just stop.
You can't not talk about
I'm
the
going to talk about the
ultimate-
ending right now, and so I have to do it in
Please
order
do
to
not
draw
listen.
this conclusion. So if you haven't learned, bye. See you later.
Have a great and glorious day in the Lord. See you later. Bye.
But if you have, now we're back. Okay. So here's the cool thing. Harry's an orphan. Voldemort is an orphan. They both, Tom Riddle, all right, they both come to Hogwarts. They are chosen by Dumbledore.
Didn't know that they
Didn't
had
know
this magic.
They had that magic, okay? They are connected through a sister and brother wand. They have equal influence and power over the wands. They have equal tracks in opportunity. One has been given the gift of love from his mom. One has been protected by his mom and dad and been extended love. That is his only advantage at Hogwarts. And their tracks end completely differently. Harry connects to people. Voldemort connects to power.
And what's interesting too, even in that, is that Harry, it's such like a perfect contrast he really makes too, because Voldemort's parents in the book, you come to find out, his dad was a Muggle.
Yep.
A non-magic person, and his mom used a love potion to
sway him,
to seduce him, and to
I had no idea.
create
fake love.
to conceive. Basically,
conceive.
it's not even real love that he is
It's
conceived
infatuation.
under. It's a potion, A, and then B, she gives birth to him and then dies, abandons him.
And
she doesn't give
she admits
herself
what she
for
done,
him.
and the father doesn't want him.
Right.
Rejects him completely.
He's completely he's completely like loveless
then,
from the start.
At the end of the book, so when you start to see that Harry is telling them, you know, it's almost like when he has that scene I was describing at the end of Order of the Phoenix, and I know this is like super allegory, so please stick with me. Don't think I'm calling Harry Potter Jesus, but it's very similar to Jesus looking at the crowds and going, dude, you don't even know what you're doing. You don't even know what you're doing. You don't know what love is. Like, you've never experienced this, and I actually feel sorry for you because you don't know what love is, and you're never going to experience that, and it's the best thing I've ever experienced. And so then you get to the last book.
And in the very final scene, it really does pit love and power like perfectly against
together.
each other, because the way that Harry defeats is by surrendering and by sacrificing. And I mean, he's not Jesus in many ways, but he is a Christ figure.
But it's sacrificial love that ends up being the absolute epitome. And
that's what wins.
It's this beautiful moment where Harry realizes that at the center, you know, Voldemort and him are connected. And the only way to save the rest of the world is to allow himself to be killed so the wand can't help, magic can't help, and all his friends in friendship can't help. His parents are there to help him, but they can't make the sacrifice. Yeah. And he has to go in all alone. And it's a beautiful thing in the book. They do a pretty good job in the movie, but it's a beautiful thing in the book. Because he walks from the tallest tower in Dumbledore's office past every memory in the books and just slowly, and you're talking about J.K. Rowling in her hotel room. This is the scene. Her describing her whole life over the last whatever years as she's written these. And it's him all the way to the deepest, darkest forest, the most dangerous thing on the entire place of the campus of Hogwarts, into the den of evil,
into the valley of the shadow of death,
in front of him, and then drops his wand and just lets it happen. I mean, it is in my mind.
I have chills, you guys. It's fine.
I go, I want my kids to ask me, why would he do that? And I want to go, because he loved his friends. And he loved his friends so much,
and it was
that he would give up his own life for him. And I'm going, that's not Jesus, and that's not God. I don't know how you don't just make that jump. This is what Jesus did for you.
It's not a very far jump. I mean, it's like kind of a sidestep.
This is what Jesus did for you. He had all the power to stop it, but he knew if he did, he couldn't rescue you, so he let it happen. And I'm like, blah! So every time I read this stupid book,
I know.
I'm just crying.
Every time you even talk about this stupid book. For those of you listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, this is what tears sound like.
And it's just a powerful thread that I hate when people write this off so quickly, because it is such a neat and quick way to just go, when Harry did this, why would he ever do that? Would you do that? Why would that work? Would that even work? And it like disarms people because they're like, I don't know if I would.
Yeah. And this, to clarify, this is not Harry being Jesus. This is Harry being like Jesus, which is exactly what Jesus called us to do. Yes. This is Harry being like very Christian right here.
And in my mind, it's done with grace and love, because he looks at his friends and he tells them what he's going to do, and they cry and they'll go, oh, I'll go with you. And he goes, you can't. You can't. I have to do it on my own. Disciples, Peter much. Like, I mean, it's legitimately so many cool moments in this story. Yeah. Now, I don't even have time to get into the other characters like Neville.
Have we talked about the like whole purity of blood thing too?
No, because that's tied in there too.
And the way that like there's this hierarchy of who is more worthy and less worthy, and that if you are a pure blood wizard, all your family has only ever been wizards. You are a wizard, you're like pure blood, versus if you're somebody who's magical but all your family has been non-magical, muggle, muggles, and then you're, born magical from that. Like there's this whole thing that gets played out, and then there's a Ministry of Magic, people who are magical have this,
police department,
right?
FBI.
Have a ministry, so to speak, a government, and then that gets corrupted throughout, like when Voldemort gets all up in there, because that's power related too.
Yep, he grabs everything he can.
And then it gets all kind of like propaganda weird against people who are not pure blood, and who is more worthy of this power. It's really, really kind of like icky when you start comparing it to what happens sometimes, where you're like, ooh, that relates
absolutely
a little bit much.
So she started writing these books in the 90s. That is 50 years after World War II, Hitler, the Jews are inferior people. Because they're Jews, they have the wrong kind of blood.
Yep. Even one parent's a Jew, or you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, same thing.
Then you have dirty blood. Whatever. And so this is so close. She's writing from Europe, so it's close to that within half a century. It's in Europe, which has historically had some major and weird power struggles.
Absolutely.
Hence the Crusades, the Catholic Church, and the Protestant Reformation. So many government things being so weird.
Little
and
things.
so the books and these stories comment on political power and how to interact with them in a playing along way and in a resistance way and in a whatever and in the value of people intrinsically, like because like you said, there can be people with two non-magical parents and then they're born magical. It doesn't seem like magic cares if you're a magic born. Maybe that makes it more likely, but it doesn't
Hermione,
seem like
who is born of non-magic parents, is so gifted.
So gifted
and
out of the
is so incredible.
It's something that does not matter. Magic doesn't care about if you're magic born or not. But people have made a big deal about just so that they can put people in this caste system.
And Voldemort's even half blood and gets all funny. I just find it
it's like how Hitler was half Jewish.
He was some Jewish. And he wasn't even blonde or blue-eyed, though.
He was something that wasn't blonde, blue-eyed German. Yeah, anyway.
His blood wasn't pure. His blood wasn't pure.
He wasn't
Do you
pure
think
blood.
any of his generals were like, so you like blonde, blue-eyed people?
You didn't even think about dyeing your hair, you idiot.
Like a mirror?
The best part about this whole discussion is it's from the perspective of kids. Kids are the ones that are narrating. And so it begins this, like, the innocence of their questions, the way that Harry's like, well, that doesn't matter, and then they're learning these terms together where he's unaware of what's he's like, I don't even know what that means. And
I don't care.
Again, all the things that compile on for
his very
conversations
first book,
with your kids.
You can make the right kind of friends. He has this offer of
He's like, I think I can choose them for myself.
It's a good King David story where it's like, I wasn't the tallest, I wasn't the strongest, I wasn't the oldest, I wasn't the best, but I've been grown up into
I've been anointed into this. No, and here's the thing. I know we got to wrap this up. I think the best part about...
Do we, though? No.
I know, right? I can talk
We
for
have
forever.
to turn the camera off, but we can keep going.
I think my favorite part about the whole thing is that when I've listened to it over and over again, it seems to recapture me. It seems to pull me in. And the older I get and the more my kids meet this age, I see that these are not issues that go away. These are not things that will not be talked about. These are things that continually come up again, and we just redefine what that looks like. 50 years ago was this, now it's maybe Republican, Democrat, maybe it's skin color. How do we defeat something that we perceive as enemy? Is it through
or other
other, you know what I mean?
It's through gaining power.
Exactly. So there's just this struggle at the center of this, and I think you're so right, Ryan, to point out that some of the mystical stuff that happens in this book, it gets a rap because it was tied to, I think, a misunderstanding of witch and wizard. Those two words just had a misunderstanding. Both the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe and Lord of the Rings, they only have one witch in either of them. And it's the evil character in the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. She's the one that makes it constantly winter.
In Lord of the Rings, no, there's like 5 wizards, right?
Yeah, but there's no witches.
Oh, okay.
Witch just has a different connotation than wizard does, and I don't know why. I think it's the negative side.
I've never heard of the Salem wizard trials. Sounds like a really fun thing. I'd love to go to.
That's a whole other can of worms that we don't want to get into.
That's my whole point. Is it just one or two words. And I don't know if you know this, but the original title of the first book was The Alchemist. I don't know if you knew that.
No, the Philosopher's Stone?
Philosopher's Stone or the Alchemist Stone. I don't remember. It was one of those two. It wasn't
the
Sorcerer's Stone, because the Sorcerer's Stone has more of like a magic feel, where it's
Yeah.
like the others, like Philosopher's Stone or the Alchemist Stone. It's like, oh, you play around with, So anyway, all I'm saying to say, I want this book to be something that maybe you get online and you read some Spark Notes, or you read some things and you get a better understanding. And then maybe it is a journey that you decide to go on with your kids. Maybe it is something you choose to read. I know John Coward, one of our elders, that's one of the books that they read together, and they finished Lord of the Rings afterwards. They just went to Lord of the Rings, and so they've read a couple different books with their kids. And so
I think there's cause to be discerning about what you let your kids
Absolutely.
consume as media goes, but I also think there's a lot of things there's no cause to be afraid of it. And even if it is wrong, and even if you read it and you find, no, this really does go against whatever, that can still be a starting point to say, now, why does this not line up with Jesus?
Absolutely.
Now, where would we disagree with this presentation of reality or this idea about, like, it doesn't mean it has to, like, completely undermine truth.
Book 1 versus book 7 is that journey. Because book 1 is, I think, super innocent. There's not much to it that I'm like, I feel like but you get to some
not
of the,
problematic necessarily.
Some of the later books, I think, especially book 4. At the end of book 4, there's a really intense scene where Voldemort is brought back. And
it's scary.
Yeah,
that would be one to be wary of with young
scary,
kids.
But like, how much darker and scarier than Revelation 11, 12, 13?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So I was going to say this earlier, and I thought about and I didn't want to interrupt but you're talking about Harry and Voldemort and how they were close and they made different decisions. Okay, Revelation 12 is this really poetic, weird
everyone
picture.
knows Revelation 12.
It's I don't even need to describe it at all.
I'm fully familiar, so I have it memorized.
I'm listening intently. I don't know.
It's this weird,
I don't know.
poetic part of Revelation. The book of Revelation is not chronological in one story and whatever. It's like you were asleep and you dreamt and you had 4 dreams and they were out of order and none of the same characters.
Yep.
I'm glad someone likes to read that book. It's the worst.
Chapter 12.
Sorry.
There's a character that gives birth to a kid and it looks like Mary and Jesus. Okay. And then Satan's there too. And in Genesis 1, 2, 3, well, just 3, I think. He's a little snake. He tempts him with some stuff. They do some bad stuff. The world goes downhill. In this, he's a giant freaking dragon. That's like Smaug from The Hobbit. It's terrifying. And so it literally says in there, like, this dragon swooping around, breathing fire, trying to eat Mary and her baby. It says this dragon's waiting at Mary's womb to eat the baby when it's born. It's terrifying.
Well, that's terrifying.
But it's this thing trying to be powerful like God.
Yep.
And then God doesn't let it happen and whatever. And anyway, some cool stuff. You get to chapter 13, and then there are these 2 beasts, and it doesn't really make sense who they are if you just read on the surface. And there's one from the sea and one from the land, and one kind of looks like Jesus, but like twisted and weird. So I think he was from the sea, and he's giant and powerful. It says he has a mortal wound on his head. So he's walking around with this sword sticking out of his skull, and just like terrifying stuff like Godzilla. And it has some qualifications that look like Jesus, but the power it is so evil. And Shane Wood talked about this, who we had on episode 56, 7, 8.
6.
Somewhere around there.
Check around there.
It's the Between Two Trees
really
interview.
Good interview. We're going to have him back on at some point.
He has a PhD in Revelation, and he called
We actually came and talked to you guys?
We went down to him.
Yeah, we came and talked to him.
Yeah.
I should watch the podcast.
You should. So he talked about this concept that Satan is God's mimetic rival.
Ooh.
Mimetic is like mime. Like I'm trying to do the same thing, but I can't really do it. So it's
like a mirror of sort or a foil.
Think about it like a birthday clown, and then think about 2 kids trying to be that birthday clown, like one on top of the other, shaky knees, the jacket covering up both, and you're like, one of those is doing a poor job. He's trying to be
That's
that
clearly
person.
the real one.
That's a mimetic rivalry.
Yeah.
You're trying to be the other one, and maybe even better, but you are nothing close.
Yep.
So that is 12 and 13, Satan the dragon, and he's trying to create this unholy trinity to match God, and it's falling so short.
Yep.
It's really stumbling, but he's trying because he's like, God's powerful. I want to be like him. That's Voldemort and Harry.
Yes, absolutely.
Voldemort is trying with all of his might.
But he's putting his eggs in the wrong basket.
Yeah, to be the most powerful wizard.
He thinks it's by this.
And Harry defeats him by a lack of power.
Yep.
Yeah, which is...
And it's Voldemort being
like
his
Jesus?
mimetic rival.
And then Harry at the very end of the book he takes his own personal wand that he enjoys, and he takes the wand of power, and he heals his wand, and he makes it whole, and then he breaks the wand of power. That was the number one. It's a humble gesture, and Hermione and Ron are like, "What have you done?" And he's just like, "I don't want any part." He turns from power. Submits to his humble position.
He's like sort of tempted by power throughout all throughout the 7th book, especially. There's this like other way he could go about accomplishing what he needs to do.
Anyway.
Like it just goes deep.
I love seeing the parallels. I love knowing. I don't want to make this sound like it's just pure gospel, but I just think there are so many avenues to great conversations that can start through this.
It's not pure gospel, but it's like you take some of those gospel concepts out, put them in a different sandbox, and play around with them.
I am excited because I think as my kids grow and with wisdom, making sure that the content matches where they're at age level with discernment, I just feel like there are opportunities that these books will either cause deep sadness and misunderstanding. They will cause deep joy and expressions of friendship, as I would love to have a friend as close as Ron. I know my oldest will say that. I need a Ron in my life. I want somebody like that. And then they'll have deep questions about sacrificial love. Is that really the way that evil is defeated? Is that really how it works? And you just want to look at them and go,
and to even say the idea of like, you know, we talk about in the church a lot, like we are in a battle. We are in a fight. There is this unseen force at work. And so to kind of, I don't know, help them stand in that place of, you are in this fight, and look at how these people did it, and look at what the cost is of following this, and look at what happens when you go this other way. That's a great equipping moment to say, which one are you going to choose? Absolutely. What are you going to step into?
And it's fun to see the faithfulness through the whole thing of God, of what I would see as like a providential thing of he builds these relationships. He has all these adults that initiate and grow and help him learn all the way to the end. He doesn't do it by himself. He's all the way helped and encouraged by this community.
That's always his impulse is to run and be alone, and he never is able to.
He never is isolated. When he's isolated is when he struggles
it's
the
most.
Worst.
Yeah.
Well, this has been awesome. I know we could talk longer, and I really appreciate it. If you've listened to this long and you've paid attention, kudos to you. Gold
We're
star.
going to send you a medal
Gold
in the mail, a little trophy.
If you leave a comment, that actually may happen. Because we need
you'll be the first.
We're going to invite you to the next table and talk about it with you.
If you like this video, please share with a friend, or if you found it encouraging.
Yeah.
And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Android, please leave us a review. It always helps us get out there and more people to see the podcast.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions or want to know more or even clarification on some of the things we talked about, feel free to email Ryan. In the link below.
If you think we are heretics and you want to burn us at the stake, our address is not for you.
1-800-Nunya.
Don't
None of your business. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Oh, gosh. And here we go.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. I know I did. Thank you so much, Traci, for being on the podcast. Yeah. And
now we've had all of Trevor's immediate family, except for his mom. Feel like we're just collecting infinity
Mom, if you're listening,
I was last other than you, so Tyler's the loved sibling.
Yeah.
Dad is more loved than me. It's fine.
You guys have a great and glorious day in the Lord. We'll see you later.
See ya.